Hey Ferret fam, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about another food review. If you haven't already seen my video on Ziwi Peak, go check that out. Link will be at the top of the screen. Today we're going to be talking about a freeze-dried raw company called Canine Naturals. I am not sponsored by this company. These are all my genuine opinions based on the label of the food and the company itself. I do not personally feed this food or any foods mentioned in this video. You can feed whatever you want to your ferret. I'm not telling you what to feed them and what not to feed them. That is totally your own prerogative. While editing, I realized I jumped right into the review without giving more of an intro on ferret nutrition, because not everyone who watches my videos is completely aware of what ferrets require, so here we go. Ferrets are obligate carnivores, meaning they should eat meat and only meat. They can also tolerate and benefit from some seafood. Unfortunately, making dry food containing only meat is very difficult and expensive. Most companies add starches and carbs to help keep the pellet food formed and have a long shelf life. And those starches, carbs, and other plant materials are not safe for ferret consumption and can have long-term negative consequences on your ferret's health, just like if we were to eat ultra-processed foods for every meal for a lifetime. Feeding fresh, raw foods gives our ferrets the best chance at a long and quality life, but not everyone has the ability to do so. There is a middle ground. Freeze-dried and air-dried meat diets are available and are the healthier choice over ultra-processed pellet food. If you are able to feed raw foods, please take a look at my raw feeding playlist. Canine Natural creates food for dogs and cats that are free of grains, and only free-range and grass-fed meats are used, which is a huge indicator to me that this company really does care about, obviously, sourcing and quality of their product. The better treated the animal is, the better quality their meat will be, the healthier it will be for your animals. All of their whole food ingredients are human grade. This is important because there is a huge difference in quality in meats that are considered human grade, safe for human consumption, and meats that are considered feed grade or pet grade. More info on human grade versus feed grade in the description of this video. Today we are going to be going over their freeze-dried diets for cats, because we know that many people do choose to feed ferrets cat food. Of course, totally depends on the quality of the cat food. You shouldn't be feeding your ferrets Meow Mix or Iams or anything like that. Foods marketed for ferrets are generally of very poor quality. That's why many people choose to do cat foods instead, and ferrets and cats have very similar dietary requirements. Canine Naturals has 3 different formulas. They have beef and Hoki feast, chicken and lamb and king salmon. And since they only have 3, we're going to briefly take a look at each of these formulas. So the beef and Hoki feast is 99% beef, Hoki, and organs, which is great, 1% New Zealand green lip mussels, essential vitamins, minerals, and oils, and of course, free of grains, wheat, corn, soy, all that nasty stuff that you do not want to see in a food for obligate carnivores. So let's take a look at the ingredient list here. So the first one, we have beef heart, which is an excellent source of B vitamin complex and essential amino acid taurine, which is very crucial and of course essential for obligate carnivores like ferrets and cats. Ferrets and cats cannot naturally produce taurine. You want to make sure that any diet that you are feeding your ferret has a sufficient amount of taurine. Hoki is a very fast growing fish. There's a lot of them found in New Zealand. And according to fishchoice.com, which is a website that I like to use when determining the sustainability of a fish that I want to feed, it says that most Hoki are caught off New Zealand by midwater and bottom trawlers. Midwater causes little habitat damage, but as the Hoki ages, they go closer and closer to the sea floor, in which they can have a larger impact on the environment. But the website states that Hoki in muddy gravel conditions, the impact is overall minimized. So going back to the Canine Naturals website, they do talk a little bit about sustainability and their choice in fish. State that New Zealand Hoki is considered one of the best managed trawl fisheries in the world. It's also low on the food chain, meaning that mercury levels and toxin levels are going to be quite low, which is very important in a food that you are going to be feeding your cat or your ferret every single day. So what does fish provide for our obligate carnivores? Fish is an excellent source of vitamin D, iodine, fatty acids, as well as taurine, and they just really help to balance those fats in a diet that contains a lot of omega-6 farmed meats like chicken and pork, and it's just overall round outs the diet, and I consider it to be an essential component in a raw diet for ferrets. The next ingredient is beef, and according to the website, this beef should be grass-fed, free-range, which is the best kind of beef that you can get alongside grass-fed and grass-finished. Terminology can be a little bit tricky when it comes to meat and meat quality, so what you would aim for is grass-fed and grass-finished, because some animals that are grass-fed might be on grass for the bulk of their life, but when the animal is scheduled for slaughter, they will often be shipped out to another farm, which is actually a feedlot, and they will finish their life on grain, which is not species appropriate for cows to be eating. That being said, grass-fed animals that are grain-finished are going to still be much better than your typical grain-fed animal that you would find in most commercial pet foods. Beef kidney is a source of water-soluble vitamins and many nutrients that are beneficial to your obligate carnivores. We generally follow the rule that 5% of their total diet should consist of other secreting organs such as kidney, thymus, brain, etc. Kidney is a wonderful ingredient to find in a pet food, and it is not something that you're going to find in most traditional dry foods. Beef liver should also make up 5% of their total diet. It contains fat-soluble vitamins, mostly vitamin A. It is actually the most concentrated natural source of vitamin A in the world, so it is very healthy for our ferrets. Beef blood is another ingredient that you're not going to see in many pet foods. It is a great ingredient, does provide the ferret or cat with nutrients. So the next ingredient is where I get a little bit iffy, and that is sunflower oil. It is a source of inactive omega-6 fatty acids. Inactive meaning that they are unable to carry out their vital roles without first being converted into the active form. Some other examples of inactive oils are safflower oil, corn oils. These inactive oils, cats and ferrets have a large difficulty being able to process into the active form, so they can't exactly really benefit from these oils. They benefit more from active oils like animal oils, fish oils, even better, the natural oils found in small oily fish. They also really do not need the extra omega-6 in their diet because most modern pet foods contain an excess amount of omega-6, so there really is no need to physically add in a omega-6 supplement, especially when it's inactive and it's not really proven beneficial to obligate carnivores. This is all taken directly from Dr. Ian Billinghurst's book, The Barf Diet, so check that out if you are interested. I do believe that they could have passed on this, so I think that they would have been able to totally withhold this ingredient. Now, that being said, when compared to most other commercial pet foods, it is still much better. I would obviously much prefer to feed a food with sunflower oil in it over foods with meat meals, bone meals, byproducts, corns, grains, artificial dyes, colorings, and whatnot. Flaxseed flakes, another iffy ingredient that is not species appropriate for carnivores. Flaxseed does provide some fatty acids along with dietary fiber. Quality meat sources in this food should be providing all that they need of fatty acids, so I don't really see the need for this ingredient. That being said, flaxseed is not overly harmful, you know, it's not going to really make your ferret sick. It is just not something that I like to see. Green lip mussels are a great ingredient that I love to see in a ferret and cat's diet. They provide more healthy fats and essential nutrients, trace nutrients such as manganese, and you're not going to find this type of ingredient in most traditional pet foods. So now we're going to move on to the synthetics in this food, and the cool thing about this food is it's very easy for the average person. You don't have to be a nutrition geek to understand the synthetics in this food. A lot of foods contain a laundry list of synthetics that you can't even pronounce, but this one doesn't. It's actually quite easy to decipher. The first one being calcium carbonate, which is a typical source of calcium in a pet food. It can also act as a preservative. Of course, ground bone is going to be preferred over a synthetic calcium source, but it is not overly harmful for your ferret or your cat. Dipotassium phosphate is a water-soluble salt that of course provides phosphorus and potassium. Dried kelp is also not technically species appropriate for obligate carnivores, but it is not overly harmful for them. A lot of raw feeders actually do choose to add kelp as a form of iodine, mostly for their cats and their dogs, not so much for ferrets. I personally do not feed it or recommend it to people for their ferrets just because it is so easy to overdose, but of course it has been properly measured for this food, so overdose is not something that I would be worried about. Chlorine, which is added into this food synthetically just in case they don't get enough from the base ingredients, which they probably would, but it is just added as a precaution because if your cat or ferret does not get enough taurine, it can be very, very bad for them. Vitamin E is an ingredient that many raw feeders do choose to add to their carnivore's diet. It is not something that I do for my ferrets. Magnesium oxide. Without magnesium, the calcium cannot be properly absorbed by the body. Low levels of magnesium can often cause calcium deficiencies because of that. And then you have zinc proteinate, of course, source of zinc. Ferrets do not need a whole lot of zinc, same with cats. Then copper proteinate, which you guessed it, is a source of copper. Manganese proteinate provides manganese, which is a trace nutrient that is often deficient in many diets for ferrets, both dry and raw. This food already contains mussels. However, when you process mussels in any way, they can kind of lose that manganese. Thiamine mononitrate provides thiamine, also known as vitamin B1, which is a essential vitamin for obligate carnivores. Of course, you have vitamin D3 and folic acid. Okay, so now I'm going to briefly glance over the other two formulas. The base ingredients are very similar, so I'm not going to actually go into detail on every single one, but they are a little bit different from each other. So the chicken and lamb is still 99% animal product and 1% greenlet mussels and synthetics. So this one is not too different, but this recipe does not contain sunflower oil. It does contain flaxseed, but not the oil, which is good. But oddly, I did notice that it doesn't contain the calcium, phosphorus, and potassium supplement like the other formula did, and I assumed that this is probably because the base ingredients naturally have more of those things in comparison to the last one, and that's why they had to add that in. But I actually do ask the company, and they did answer, and they said that the calcium in our chicken and lamb formula comes from natural occurring sources within ingredients to meet AFCO minimums without the need for additional supplementation. So makes sense to me. And now we have the lamb and king salmon feast. It also does not contain the sunflower oil. It does contain the flaxseed though, and it also contains the calcium and phosphorus supplement. Overall, I do think that the two formulas without sunflower oil are the best ones to choose from. So I wanted to quickly compare it to a very popular freeze-dried brand fed to ferrets, Stella Chewy's. More specifically, the Duck Duck Goose formula is what I see most commonly fed to ferrets. Stella's does use high pressure pasteurization, which I believe I talked about a little bit in my last video, but you can find more info on that down below. Basically, they use a lot of pressure on their product to attempt to rid it of pathogenic bacteria if any are present. However, during that process, it does actually denature the proteins and naturally occurring enzymes in the raw food, which kind of makes it not really a raw food anymore by the end of it. So I wouldn't personally recommend it, mostly for the reason that they do use HPP. Please do check out the links below that go more in detail on that process. They mentioned they use only cage-free poultry, but truthfully, cage-free only means that they don't live in a cramped cage. They are still contained and they do not need access to the outdoors. A better source of poultry would be free range and pasture raised. That means that they do get outdoor access. I'm only going to quickly skim over the ingredients in Duck Duck Goose because it is a lot longer. The first base ingredients section is duck with bone, turkey liver, goose, gizzard. All wonderful ingredients to see in a pet food. Gizzard is not an organ. Gizzard is just a muscle meat that you will find in poultry. And so this food does not contain enough organs, and that is why the synthetic list is a lot longer to make up for that lack of natural nutrition. And that is why you see the addition of choline chloride. This is used to fill in those gaps. And they also have some ingredients that are a little bit iffy, such as pumpkin seed, which is not species appropriate for carnivores, but it is used in this food as a prebiotic. So it is food for the bacteria, the probiotics, which can be good but not guaranteed beneficial, especially if they are putting the food under high pressure pasteurization. And combine that with the high acidity in the carnivore's stomach, you're not guaranteed a whole lot is left behind, and that can be utilized in your ferret or your cat. I did ask Stella Chewy's if they use human grade meats. They kind of skirted around my question. In the first one, they did not actually directly answer my question. I did have to ask them a second time if they use human grade meats, but they did actually answer my question the second go around. They said, "Hi Bryn, since our raw dinners contain things like organs and bones, which aren't considered human grade, we cannot consider the product human grade. Additionally, our products are manufactured in pet-specific facilities, meaning they also cannot be considered human grade. If you're looking specifically for human grade, I would suggest our Marvelous Morsels or Perfect Pâtés. These are human grade, thank you. This is a bit misleading. Yes, organs and bones can actually be considered human grade. If you think about it, chicken wings, turkey necks, stuff like that you would find in a human grocery store for human consumption. Organs, you've got, you know, most of the time you can find chicken hearts and beef liver. Chicken livers are often consumed by humans. This kind of makes it sound like that any product that contains organs and bones cannot be considered human grade, which is not true. They do mention the morsels and the perfect pâtés that are human grade, which is great, but they do contain things like pumpkin and carrots, which are not species appropriate. I wouldn't feed those foods to my ferret or my cat. So yeah, overall, Canine Naturals does contain enough organ meats to not require such a huge synthetic list, which is something that I put a lot of importance in. However, both foods are going to have the same issues because you're feeding a freeze-dried raw food, so it's going to be very moisture deficient. You should add water into your freeze-dried raw food before feeding it to your ferrets, and it is not going to do anything to keep your ferrets' teeth clean, so you are going to have to brush your ferrets' teeth regardless of what freeze-dried raw or even air-dried raw, dehydrated raw food that you are feeding. I'm also going to be a little bit more of a critic and go into the common qualms people have when discussing freeze-dried raw, things that I've personally seen myself. The first one being, I'm afraid it doesn't contain enough bone, because they assume that these processed pet foods need to exactly replicate like a normal raw diet would, 80% meat, 10% bone, 10% organ. Most commercial pet foods do not contain actual animal bone. Instead, they do use calcium supplements, but they should be following AAFCO minimum requirements. Those same supplements can be found in popular foods fed to ferrets such as Ysong. If you're using that argument, you should be looking at the food that you are feeding. It's going to have those same supplements in. The next one being, it doesn't have enough ingredients. People feel more comfortable feeding a food with a laundry list of ingredients because they feel like it makes it more complete, it is more rounded out, has more nutrients and vitamins, minerals, but the truth is, the smaller the list, that means that the base ingredients like the meat and the animal organ has enough naturally occurring enzymes, nutrients, vitamins, minerals. You're not going to find foods like lamb kidney and beef liver in traditional pet foods, and that is why they contain such a huge list of ingredients. Canine Naturals is available in the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. You can buy it online, such as popular sites like Chewy.com and Amazon. It is going to be quite expensive, as most freeze-dried raw diets are. It's about $33 for an 11-ounce bag, compared to Stella Chewy's, which is about $40 for an 18-ounce bag, so it is quite expensive. So that is all that I have for you today. Overall, I do think that Canine Naturals has a good freeze-dried raw food line that could be fed to ferrets. And remember that this is my personal opinions as a pet parent and pet nutrition geek. You don't have to listen to what I say. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my channel members. I will see you in my next video. Bye.